Coming to the next one, Indian Council Act 1892. After 1861 Council Act, this is the second Council, Indian Council Act 1892. The salient features of this act were: it increased the number of Central Legislative Council. It increased members of Central Legislative Council. Central Legislative Council, Central Legislative Council was established by 1853 Charter Act, consisting of 6 members. After that, by 1861 Council Act, the number was increased to 10. By this act, the number was increased to 16. So, Central Legislative Council was established in 1853. Then it consists of 6 members. By Indian Council Act 1861, the number was increased to 10 members. And now by this act, the number was increased by Indian Council Act 1892 to 16 members. So the number of Central Legislative Council was increased from 10 to 16 by this act, 1892 Council Act. The second salient feature is the Central Legislative Assembly was given more powers to discuss on budget. Central Legislative Council was empowered with the powers to discuss on budgets and to question on executive activities. Important points. The Central Legislative Council was given more powers to discuss an annual budget. Budget was introduced by British Empire in India in 1860. And this act enacted the Central Legislative members to discuss on budget and also to ask questions on executive activities. What the government had taken the decisions or taken the decisions implementing on certain cases. So, questioning power and discussing power on budget, these two powers were empowered to the Central Legislative Council. And this act empowered the Viceroy to nominate a few people to the Central Legislative Council. Empowered Viceroy to nominate some non-official members to the Central Legislative Council on the recommendations of state legislative councils. State legislative councils means provincial legislative councils. So, by this Act of 1892, some famous Indian personalities were nominated to the Central Legislative Council. A few of them are Dadabhai Naoroji, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, Firoz Shah Mehta, Surendranath Banerjee. Such people were nominated to the Central Legislative Council on the recommendations of Central Legislative Council and other NGO institutions and other boards, other municipalities and other district boards. So these are the 3 things are important concepts of Council Act 1892. First one is, it increased the number of Central Legislative Council from 10 to 16. Of these 16 Legislative Council members, 6 members were non-official members nominated from Indian society by the Viceroy. Dadabhai Naoroji, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, Firoz Shah Mehta, Surendranath Banerjee, all these are some people. Bill Gramy, like that. And second one is, the Central Legislative Council members were empowered to discuss on budget and to ask questions on executive activities. And the Viceroy was empowered to nominate some Indian personalities as non-official members to the Central Legislative Councils on the recommendations of state legislative assemblies, on the recommendations of municipalities, different various boards and various sections of the society. These are the 3 important points of Council Act 1892. Next one is Marley-Minto Reforms. Marley-Minto Reforms 1909 or Minto-Marley Reforms 1909 or Government of India Act 1909. 1909 Act, 1935 and 1947. These 4 acts were very, very important in the examination point of view. You should focus on that. Next act is Marley-Minto Reforms 1909 or Government of India Act 1909. We can pronounce it as Government of India Act or Marley-Minto Reforms. Why it is called as Marley-Minto Reforms? Marley was then the Secretary of State of India Minto was then the Viceroy of India. By the names of two personalities, this act is known as Marley-Minto reforms. Who was Marley? Secretary of State. Then the Secretary of State was Marley, Lord Marley. Then the Viceroy of India was Lord Minto. On the names of these two personalities, this act is known as Marley-Minto reforms, not Minto-Marley reforms. Marley-Minto reforms. Why? Because Secretary of State has high designation than Viceroy. Secretary of State has high designation than Viceroy. That's why he was preferred as first. Marley-Minto reforms 1909. The salient features of this act. Number one is increased members of Central Legislative Council and State Legislative Council. CLC, SLC, both are different, you should know. Central Legislative Council, which acts as a mini parliament at federal level, at central level, like a parliament. State Legislative Council or Provincial Legislative Council, SLC or PLC, provincial, province means state. Provincial Legislative Council is a legislative council at state level to enact laws to the Provincial Legislative Council and State Legislative Council. CLC, SLC, both are different, you should know. Central Legislative Council, which acts as a mini parliament at federal level, at central level, like a parliament. State Legislative Council or Provincial Legislative Council, SLC or PLC, provincial, province means state. Provincial Legislative Council is a legislative council at state level to enact laws to the state territory. So, the State Legislative Council members are increased from 16 to 60. 16 to 60. So, already we discussed the Central Legislative Council members at first 6 members, next 10, next 16, next 60. So, by this Act 1909, Central Legislative Council members are increased from 16 to 60, and also State Legislative Council members also increased, but not in uniformity. Not in uniform manner. So, for each and every State Legislative Council, as per their population, as per their area, different number of persons are there. It is not uniform. But Central Legislative Council members are increased to 60 members. 60 members. This is the first one. Second important key point of this act is, for the first time, forever the first time, to the Executive Council of Viceroy, an Indian is nominated for the first time. So before that, before 1909, Indians were nominated to the Central Legislative Council. Indians became a part of law-making process before this act. But by this act, for the first time, Indians are also nominated to the Executive Council of Viceroy. Executive Councils. Indians were nominated to the Executive Council. Executive Council of Viceroy. The first person who was nominated to Executive Council of Viceroy was Satyendra Nath Bose. Satyendra Nath Bose. He was the first person who was nominated to the Executive Council. Sir, Satyendra Prasad Sinha, not Bose. Satyendra Prasad Sinha. He was the first person, first Indian, who was nominated to the Executive Council of Viceroy as a law member. As a law member. You know one thing? Executive and legislative, these two bodies were separated by 1853 Act. You know, by 1853 Charter Act, the powers of Governor General are distinguished as executive and legislative. By 1853 Charter, executive and legislative, these two bodies were separated by 1853 Act. You know, by 1853 Charter Act, the powers of Governor General are distinguished as executive and legislative. In this, Central Legislative Council was established, and Executive Council was under the chairmanship of Viceroy. To this Executive Council of Governor General or Viceroy, Satyendra Prasad Sinha was nominated at the first time. So that's why these acts are council acts. Why? Because Indians were being nominated to the Executive Council and Legislative Councils, so that they were very popularly known as council acts. So this is very, very important. Satyendra Prasad Sinha was the first Indian member who was nominated to the Viceroy Executive Council. And one of the most important thing of this act is it introduced communal electorates or communal representation system in India. This is very, 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 very important. The third and most important point of this is it introduced communal electorates. Communal electorates means communal representation. Communal representation was introduced first time to the Muslims. To the Muslims. The first indirect elections were introduced. The first indirect election system was introduced by 1892 Council Act. But by this 1909, the communal electorate system was introduced. Means reserving some seats to a particular community. For first time in India, such specific electorates were reserved from Muslims based on religion, based on community. That's why they are known as communal electorates. Lord Minto was the father of communal electorates in India. He introduced the concept of communal electorates because it has a historical background. In 1905, the Bengal was divided. Bengal partition took place in 1905. As a result of Bengal partition in 1905, a Swadeshi movement was broke out. Both Hindus and Muslims together, they led the movement, Swadeshi movement, in a good manner, in a unite manner, to divide the Indian society on the grounds of community, to divide the Indian society based on the religion as Hindus and Muslims, to create disputes and misunderstandings between both Hindus and Muslims. Lord Minto had planned this communal electorate system. For that, as a result, he introduced communal electorates. He reserved some electorates for specific Muslim categories. The electorates which were reserved to the Muslim category, no Hindus are allowed to contest from that constituency. Only Muslim member used to contest from such communal electorate from Muslim constituency. Henceforth, it might create some disputes between Hindus and Muslims. This is the plan behind the introducing of communal electorates. That's why Lord Minto was very popularly known as the father of communal electorates. The father of communal electorates. The father of communal electorates, because he divided the Indian society into two parts on the grounds of religion. Hence, he laid down the foundation stone to divide India as two countries, as two dominions in 1947, August 15th, on the grounds of religion. As per Mountbatten Plan adopted on June 3rd, 1947, India divided into two dominion states on the grounds of religion, on the grounds of Muslim, on the grounds of Hindu. The concept was adopted by this act in 1909. Henceforth, the basic source of partition of India came back to 1909. Lord Minto was the reason behind the partition of India, and critics refer that he was known as the father of communal electorates. These are the three important concepts of Minto-Marley reforms 1909. So once again, revise them. It increased the Central Legislative Council members from 16 to 60, as well as State Legislative Council. Into 60, as well as State Legislative Council. Next, one of the most important acts enacted during Crown rule is 1919 Montagu-Chelmsford Reforms, or Government of India Act 1919. Very, very, very important act. Government of India Act 1919, or Montagu-Chelmsford Reforms. Montagu was then the Secretary of State. Chelmsford was then the Viceroy of India. Montagu was then the Secretary of State. Chelmsford was then the Viceroy of India. By the two names of the personalities, this act is known as Montagu-Chelmsford Reforms, or Government of India Act. The salient features of this act are, this act, 1919 Act, was actually enacted in 1919, but it came into existence in 1921. Actually, it was came into force in 1921. Actually, it is adopted in 1919. So the salient features of these acts are, for the first time, bicameralism was introduced at central level. Very, very important. Bicameralism was introduced at central. Next, one of the most important, 21. Actually, it was came into force in 1921. Actually, it is adopted in 1919. So the salient features of these acts are, for the first time, bicameralism was introduced at central level. Very, very important. Bicameralism was introduced at central level. At central level. What is bicameralism? Bicameralism means a legislative council or a legislature system which consisting of two houses having upper house and lower house is referred as bicameralism. Having two houses in a legislature system is called bicameralism. Once again I repeat, having two houses, upper house and lower house, in a legislature system is called bicameralism. Bicameralism is still implementing in India. Today, our legislature, Indian Parliament, has two houses, upper house Rajya Sabha, lower house Lok Sabha. This type of bicameralism was introduced by the British Empire by the Act of 1919. So this bicameralism concept was introduced at which level? At state level, not at state level. At central level, it was introduced. So at central level, what was then the legislative system? This is Central Legislative Council. Okay, already it was set up by the Act of 1853. Already we know. So the Central Legislative Council was divided into two houses. One is upper house and two lower house. Upper house and lower house. This upper house is known as Council of States. Council of States. This lower house is known as Central Legislative Assembly. Central Legislative Assembly. The Central Legislative Council was divided into two houses, upper house and lower house. Upper house is known as Council of States and lower house is known as Central Legislative Assembly. Council of States consisting of 60 members. 60 members. Of these 60 members, 34 members were elected to elections. Remaining 26 members were appointed by Governor General. The term of these members are 5 years. 5 years. Coming to the lower house, it is Central Legislative Assembly. It consisting of 145 members. 145 members. Of these 145 members, 104 members are elected and 41 members are nominated. The term of these members are 3 years. This is all about Central Legislative Assembly and Council of States. Very, very important here. Very, very, very important. Bicameralism was introduced at central level. But then the Central Legislative Council was divided into two houses, upper house and lower houses. Upper house is called Council of States, which represents states. And lower house is called Central Legislative Assembly. Council of States consisting of 60 members. Of these 60 members, 34 members were elected. Remaining 26 members are nominated by the Governor General. Nominated or appointed by the Governor General. The term of these 60 members are 5 years. Today it is Rajya Sabha. Today Rajya Sabha consisting of 245 members. Of 245 members, 233 members are elected and remaining 12 members are nominated by the President of India. Today. So that Rajya Sabha, now Rajya Sabha, previously it is Council of States, was introduced in 1999. And lower house, coming to the lower house, it is called and 41 members are nominated. The term of these members are 3 years. This is all about Central Legislative Assembly and Council of States. Very, very important here. Very, very, very important. Bicameralism was introduced at central level. Then the Central Legislative Council was divided into two houses, upper house and lower houses. Upper house is called Council of States, which represents states. And lower house is called Central Legislative Assembly. Council of States consisting of 60 members. Of these 60 members, 34 members were elected. Remaining 26 members are nominated by the Governor General. Nominated or appointed by the Governor General. The term of these 60 members are 5 years. Today it is Rajya Sabha. Today Rajya Sabha consisting of 245 members. Of 245 members, 233 members are elected and remaining 12 members are nominated by the President of India. Today. So that Rajya Sabha, now Rajya Sabha, previously it is Council of States, was introduced in 1919 Act. And lower house, coming to the lower house, it is called Central Legislative Assembly. It consisting of 145 members and 144 members plus one chairman, one president. Of these 145 members, 104 members were elected directly and 41 members are appointed or nominated by Viceroy. The term of these members are 3 years. Okay. As per 1919 Act, for the first time in India, the general elections were held in 1921. The first general elections, important. The first general elections were held to whom? To the members of 141, to the Legislative Assembly. The first general elections were held in 1921 to the lower house of Central Legislative Assembly for every 3 years. Next, in 1924, in 1929, in 1933, in 1937, in 1945. So, 6 times the general elections were held during British Empire. So, to elect members to the Central Legislative Assembly as per this Act, in 1921 first general elections were held. 104 members were elected to the Central Legislative Assembly by the 1921 general elections. This is the basic concept. Bicameralism was introduced at central level with the name of Council States and the Central Legislative Assembly. This is a very, very important point you should remember. Coming to next one, it introduced a diarchy system at state level, at province or provincial. State level. Province is nothing but state. Diarchy is a Greek term. Diarchy is a Greek term. It is a Greek term. It is derived from diarchy, meaning is dual government. Dual government. The term diarchy is derived from a Greek term diarchy. Di means two, double. Dual government. So this 1919 Act introduced a dual government system at state level, at provincial level. Means, as per this system of diarchy system, the items are classified into 2 categories under reserved items and qualified items or transferred items. Reserved and transferred items. Here items means the things which have to be administered by the government: education, agriculture, defense, public safety, public health, primary education, forestry. All these things are nothing but the items which can be administered by the government. These items are classified into 2 categories: reserved items and transferred items. Reserved items consisting of 28 items. 28 items. It consisting of 22 items, transferred items. Reserved items are the most important things which were controlled, which were administered by the Governor General, by the Governor with the help of Executive Council. Whereas transfer items are some unimportant things which were under the control of Indian ministers. Both 2 things are administered by Governor, State Governor. But Governor administered these reserved things with the help of Executive Council. Transfer items were administered by the Governor with the help of Council of Ministers of India. So this is the diarchy system. Means the administration categorizing into 2 types: reserved items and transfer items. Reserved items are the most important things which were under the control of Governor and Executive Council. Transfer items are some unimportant things which were under the control of Governor and Council of Ministers, Indian ministers. So this is called, there are 2 types of government, wings are working to implement these 2 things. That's why it is called dual government. For reserved items, there is a section of government. For transferred items, there is a section of government. 2 sections of government are being worked to implement these things. That's why it is called diarchy, means dual government. So this dual government was introduced by 1919 Act at provincial level, at state level. These are the 2 important things. Next, coming to the next important points. These are the main important points. Next, this act completely abolished the monopoly of the central government over the states. States were given some freedom to be individual authorities and states were given some authority to make the individual acts on the grounds of their needs and demands. Therefore, the items were classified into two lists, federal list and provincial list. Some items were reserved to the central government, some items were reserved to the state government, so that the powers of the state government and the central government were classified. Today, India has three types of lists. Today, in Indian federal system, the powers were distributed into three categories: central list, state list and concurrent list. But the first time in 1919 Act, the powers are distributed between state and central, between federal and provincial, as federal list and provincial list. This is one more important key feature of this act. And one more thing is, before this act, in 1909, communal electorates to the Muslim category was implemented, was introduced in 1909 Act. That was the communal electorates were continued by this act also. Especially special communal electorates were reserved from Sikh category, Christian category, Anglo-Indians and Europeans. By continuing the communal electorates from 1909 Act, this act also reserved some special electorates to the some categories. Communal electorates were continued and extended to some categories: Sikhs, Christians, Anglo-Indians and Europeans. By 1909, these communal electorates were only reserved to the Muslim category only. But by this act, such electorates were reserved to the Sikhs, Christians, Anglo-Indians and Europeans also. So it continued the previous system of special electorates to a particular category of Indian society. Next one is, it reserved 3 members of Executive Council of Viceroys to the Indians completely. Viceroys Executive Council consisting of 6 members. By 1909 Act, Satyendra Prasad Sinha was the first member nominated to the Viceroys Executive Council. But this act increased the nominated members to the Viceroy Executive Council to be 3 members. Viceroy's Executive Council consisting of 6 members. Of these 6 members, 3 members were Indians. So this act adopted a provision of some categories. Communal electorates were continued and extended to some categories: Sikhs, Christians, Anglo-Indians and Europeans. By 1909, these communal electorates were only reserved to the Muslim category only. But by this act, such electorates were reserved to the Sikhs, Christians, Anglo-Indians and Europeans also. So it continued the previous system of special electorates to a particular category of Indian society. Next one is, it reserved 3 members of Executive Council of Viceroys to the Indians completely. Viceroy's Executive Council consisting of 6 members. By 1909 Act, Satyendra Prasad Sinha was the first member nominated to the Viceroy's Executive Council. But this act increased the nominated members to the Viceroy Executive Council to be 3 members. Viceroy's Executive Council consisting of 6 members. Of these 6 members, 3 members were Indians. So this act adopted a provision to reserve 3 seats in Viceroy's Executive Council to Indians. And this act formed a federal public service commission to conduct civil services examinations. Only one public service commission at central level. At central level, a central public service commission was adopted to conduct a civil service examination at central level. No state public service commission, no joint public service commission. Only federal public service commission is only set up at central level by this act. And this act extended the franchise. Franchise means universal voting right. The franchise on the basis of income tax. Sorry, on the grounds of property, on the grounds of income tax, the universal franchise was extended to only specific categories, especially in some regions, Travancore like the Prince States. The franchise is extended and permitted to women also. These are the basic things, basic concepts of 1919 Act. And last, one more key feature is, it established a High Commissioner office in London to execute the matters of Indians. These are these things. So let us revise the key concepts of this 1919 Act. It introduced bicameralism system at central level. It introduced diarchy system at state level. It established a federal public service commission to conduct civil service examinations. It extended franchise, means voting right of vote. It extends franchise on the grounds of property and income tax. The 1919 Act was set up a High Commissioner office in London, and it reserved 3 members to the Indians in Viceroy's Executive Council. And it extends separate electorates to the Sikhs, to the Christians, and to the Anglo-Indians and Europeans category. This is the summary of 1919 Act or mounting change for reforms. There is a scope, persons may be asked from this category. And you should remember, the first general elections were held in 1921 as per 1919 Act. Actually, this act was adopted in 1919, but it was came into force in 1921. And also, these 2 areas also you have to focus. Central Legislative Council was divided into 2 houses, upper house and lower house. Upper house is known as Council of State, Central Legislative Assembly. It consisting of 60 members. It consisting of 145 members. Of these 60 members, 34 members were elected and remaining 26 were nominated by Governor General. Here, of these 145 members, 104 members were elected directly and 41 members were nominated. The term of Central Legislative Assembly is 3 years. So first time in 1921, the general elections were held to the Central Legislative Assembly. 104 members were elected to Central Legislative Assembly by 1921 general elections. These are the important things you should remember.